everybody, welcome to the events live stream. Today we are going to be covering the event screen in ChurchTrac and showing you all the ins and outs of everything. Now this is, I gotta warn you, there's a lot going on in here. This is packed with so many features. So we're gonna do our very best to try to show you kind of an overview of everything that's going on in the event screen to help you with tracking attendance, being able to create all of your events and have registrations and so much more. But before we get started, just a couple things I want to remind everybody of. Number one, our Facebook group. If you are on Facebook and you have not joined the group, you should totally do it. We have so many people from all around the world that have joined this group. It's just such a great opportunity to get everybody talking about the software, helping each other out. And I see a lot of ministry leaders in there jumping in, giving some amazing advice. And so if you're on Facebook, that's a group to join. The next thing is our YouTube channel. Now, when it comes to learning how to do new things, I tend to watch videos primarily because one, I don't have the time to read a whole bunch, and number two, I just rather watch a video. We have a lot of videos in our YouTube channel that really go through all of the features in the software, a lot of step-by-steps. So if you're trying to learn how to use something like accounting perhaps, or maybe you're wanting to use the giving screen and learn how to set up online giving, whatever it may be, there's probably a video for it. So go ahead, check out ChurchTrac on our YouTube channel. Now, the best way to get help all day, every day is by clicking that green, or I'm sorry, not green, I'm colorblind today. It is a tangerine colored help button in the top right of the software. And I'll just kind of zoom in real quick, just in case you may be on a smaller device and can't see where I'm pointing there. But if you click that button, that will bring you into our online user guide. You can create a support ticket. You can ask us a question. You can schedule a phone call. There is no shortage of getting support here at ChurchTrac software. I really appreciate how everything is kind of put into different categories. I'm very categorized in that regard. But again, you can create a support ticket, schedule a phone call, get help from our team in a flash. Now, this particular live stream, I'm going to be keeping the chat wide open. So as I go through all this, if you do have any questions or anything, feel free to let us know in the chat. I've got one of our people that's watching over that to answer your questions. Now, I will be having a dedicated Q&A time at the very end. So if you have like specific things you want me to jump into, we can do that. But yeah, jump on in the chat. Tell us where you're coming from and everything. I'm going to try to be interactive here and talk with you as we go. We don't like to make this just something where I'm just giving you a whole bunch of information and, you know, not actually conversing with you here. So, hey, Carla. And if you're watching this at a later time, hello, future, you can always just reach out to our support team since you can't actually be interactive with the chat with us today. So, all right. Well, today, as we cover the event screen, there's a lot going on the event screen, but really, I just want to kind of, if I can, laser focus into just a few things that I want to answer. The first thing I want to answer is, what is the events screen in ChurchTrac? So actually show what that is and just kind of the quick overview. Then I want to talk about, like, how do you get started with events in a ChurchTrac? And so we'll go through some of the things to do to get started with the event screen. And then we're going to talk about how to get the most out of it because there are features in the event screen that you'll want to use to really get the most out of it. And then to kind of finish things off, we have a little part at the end where I just want to give you some tips. We have a lot of things going on the screen, but if you follow some of these tips here, I think it's going to help you out tremendously, save you a lot of time, and just make your life easier. So, all right, well, let's go ahead. Let's get started. I'm cranking up the old car here, getting into my ChurchTrac account. Now, to get to the event screen in ChurchTrac, you go to the event screen here on the toolbar. If your toolbar is in the top, then it'll be on the top. But if your toolbar is in the left, like mine, then you'll just select that to go to the event screen. And the first thing you are going to see when you get to the event screen is the calendar. Now, I'm not going to try to, talk about what a calendar is. I think everyone here today understands what a calendar is. You probably are already living on your calendar, especially in ministry. We have so many events that go on at our churches and trying to make sure we're not double booking things and, knowing that this is on this day. So you're using a calendar. What I do want to bring attention to is that when you are using the calendar, you can have many different calendars put in here. So if I go right here on the tabs, I've got the attendance and check-in, I have reports, but then I have edit calendars. So I can actually edit my calendars and have additional calendars. I always recommend creating a calendar for each ministry, but you can have different colors and name them and stuff like that, who can view them, all the things. And then we also have this options tab, and this is where you can actually manage locations for all the different events that you have going on at your church. So this is something definitely key. So if you have like multiple rooms in your church, perhaps, if you have different areas within your church, maybe you have different locations for your church, then you can actually go ahead, add a location from here, type it out, and then boom, you've got a location for your calendar. So you can specify what locations these events are happening at. And the other thing I do want to point out here too, because this is a very common thing, you want the ability to have your calendar viewed, and we give you a few different ways to do that beyond just viewing it in the software, and that is by either exporting it, and you can just export the ICS file, or you can have a public calendar. And so what ChurchTrac will do, it provides you with this code that you can drag and drop right into your church's website if you are managing your website, or you can get with your webmaster and have them do this for you. We provide all the code for you. And then the other thing too is we have the calendar feed. And this is actually really cool because basically you can just take this URL and like link it to a button on your existing church website, and your people can actually, when they click that button, it links it right to them, and then they can download that calendar right onto their phone, which is really nice. So that way you or your people at your church can have all these events and everything show up on their phone right there in their native calendar app on their phone. So that's something I really like to point out, just because we live in a world where we want to make it really easy for our people to get access to the calendar and everything. And I think one of the worst things, and I know, tell me in the chat, how many times have you heard someone say, I didn't know about that? You know, I don't. From every time I hear someone say that, I just kind of twitch a little bit. And maybe you've had one of your own staff members say, "Oh, I didn't know we were having that event," and you're just like, "Oh, I've talked about it for like the past month. Didn't you look at the calendar?" This is why it's so important to kind of have different calendars in the software, and then give ownership to your ministries for that, but also make your calendar super accessible by the ways I just showed with that. Okay. So the other areas of the software, just kind of still in that overview part there, we have this reports tab that I mentioned. We'll dive more into reports, but I just want you to know that when you're on the event screen, you click that reports tab. That's where all the reports are going to be. And then when you're dealing with attendance and check-in, this is where you want to create those events. Now you can create attendance events and check-in events from the main calendar screen, but I find that it's actually just a lot quicker and easier to do it from this screen because of the layout. It is, one person told me, that's kind of redundant to have two areas where you can create that. It is, but at the same time, you'll find that when it comes to doing events with attendance, it's actually much better to use this screen. So I always like to point that out. Okay. Well, that is the quick overview of just kind of where the event screen is and how to get to it and everything. Let's talk about how to get started with events. So let's start first with just the generic calendar itself. When it comes to creating an event in your calendar, the process is pretty straightforward. It's like pretty much any calendar program out there. You just select the date, and then from there you can title whatever that event is. And so I'm just going to call this a test event. I know it's not a fun event, but I'm just going to call it a test event. And then you can specify if it's an all-day event, the start date, the end date. So I can say, hey, this is happening at a specific time on this day, specific location. I can put that in here. And then from here, I can even say what calendar I want it assigned to, which is super key. And now another thing here is I can publish this event to public calendar. This is something I want to stop for a moment and just really point out here. Anytime you create a calendar event, the only way for it to be visible on your public calendar, so on Church Connect for your people, is by selecting this, publish this event. And the reason we've done this is just because there are a lot of internal events and things at your church that you don't want to be like on your main website and stuff. And so this gives you the power to really specify which events are on your website or on your church app and which events are not. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm going a little off script here, but these are super important things that they're like the small things, but sometimes the small things are the real big things. And in this case, this is a real big thing just because you want your events to pop up on your calendar and your feed and everything. Well, you got to make sure you do that. And then we also have registrations. This is where you enable registrations for an event. You can also, from here, go straight to configuring this event for attendance and check-in, which I'll be showing in a moment. Now, another thing I do want to bring attention to is the ability to make an event recurring. So you can create an event, have it recurring in the system, and it will then go ahead. So if I select that, then it will repeat that event until a certain time. So this is a really great feature to use. And then we also have the ability to clone events as well. I recommend checking out our online user guide. We actually go through all that and kind of explain it and stuff, and that will just make your life a lot easier. By the way, everything I'm covering today, we've got videos on this stuff and we've got step-by-steps. So just check out the user guide if you want to dive into like really specific details and stuff. We've got all the information there to help you out. All right, so let's go ahead. Let's dive into creating a small group, because this is a real life scenario. Like my church, we want to keep track of attendance. And so why not keep track of attendance for, let's say, our youth group? So I'm going to create an event, and because this is an attendance event, I'm actually going to scoot on over to the attendance tab here, and then I'm going to create it from here. So I'll select this add button here, and I'll zoom in just in case you're on a smaller device, can't see that add button. And then I'll zoom back out so that way you can actually see more than just a massive calendar. Now I'm going to title this event, and I'm just going to call this Youth Night. And our church, it's every Wednesday we have our youth, and then I can go ahead and I can assign a calendar to this. So for this particular scenario, I'm just going to say, you know what, this is on our youth ministry calendar because I like to keep all these things on the specific calendars for those ministries. Add that date. There we go. Okay, now this is a part that I need to take a pause to talk about tags. So tags are a feature in ChurchTrac that enable you to assign a tag to different people, and a tag is really the basis of organization in ChurchTrac. So if you have different small groups, things like that, you want to create a tag for that and then assign that tag to the people that are a part of that group. So I have already gone ahead and I have tagged every kid that's in the youth group as the discipleship group youth tag, I believe it was. So I can actually go in here and then find that tag. There it is, discipleship groups youth. And so that is the tag I want to apply for this. Now, just a quick FYI, you can have multiple tags assigned to an event. Now, in this case scenario though, I only have the one tag I need. I'll apply the selection, and there we go. Now I've got that tag assigned to that particular event. And now I'm ready to start taking my attendance. Now, when it comes to doing attendance in ChurchTrac, there are a few different ways to do that. Now, the first way is by going to our live mode. And so right here, I'll just zoom in just in case you're on a smaller device, you can't see that. But the live mode, this is a really great way to track attendance in a situation that's like not a secure check-in, check-out mode like you would need for like a children's ministry, but you're just wanting to quickly know who's there, who's not there. Now I see in some churches for their youth ministry, they actually have a check-in and check-out, some do not. It just comes down to your church and your needs. And then from here, I can select all groups or specific tag to do attendance. And so this is the beauty of this. I love this so much just because this screen here, this is what it looks like on a computer, and I can search a name here too. So if I wanted to search for a particular child that I wanted to mark as there for that attendance event, I could, or I can just have them all here. And then the process of checking them in is just selecting them. So whether or not you're on a computer, a tablet, a phone, it is responsive, automatically works accordingly. I see a lot of youth groups, what they'll do is they'll have a tablet out in the front as kids come in and they just select their name just like I'm doing right now. Or I'll see the youth leader, one of their volunteers will just be sitting there with their phone or something, and as they see kids come in, they'll just select the kid. That way they know who's there. So this is what we call the live mode. Really great way to track attendance, super fast. If you are a smaller ministry, you can actually use this method as well for maybe your main worship at your church. I do not recommend trying to keep individual attendance if you're like in a main worship setting at your church. Once you start hitting above a certain number, usually that number is like 50 or 60. For situations like that, that's when I would actually recommend just doing like a number count. And you can do that on ChurchTrac as well by just selecting the event here, and then I just scroll down to the bottom and I can just mark a number count. So this is just it just comes down to your needs. Like if you're needing a quick number count, do this method instead. If you're wanting to do individual attendance, then from there you can actually just select each person in the attendance to do that. Now the other thing we have too when it comes to doing attendance here in ChurchTrac is the ability to print out a roll sheet. And so you can actually customize like what type of roll sheet you want to print out, and you can give this roll sheet to like the volunteers or whoever's tracking the attendance. And I see this really popular for small groups, Sunday school classes, things like that, because sometimes at the end of the day, it's just easier to hand people a sheet of paper for like the entire month to the Sunday school leader and say, hey, just track attendance on the sheet and then just give it back to us. It just comes down to your needs. I see other churches that go completely digital. It just really comes down to what your volunteers are comfortable with doing and what they're capable of doing. But we give you many options. I see a lot of churches even do a hybrid approach where some of their leaders will do this all digitally on their own, whereas other leaders will use the printed roll sheet. So I always recommend trying to go digital if you can, just because it makes less work for you as a church admin. Because if your leaders are recording the attendance and everything, then you're not having to do all that, and it's just less work. So that is how you do an attendance event, just like the very quick version of it. Now let's show another way of tracking attendance, and that is utilizing the check-in mode. So check-in mode, this is built into ChurchTrac, and FYI, if you're using another tool to have like child check-in on top of this, you don't need to do that anymore. ChurchTrac, we have replaced the need for so many tools that I see churches using. I'll see churches have like a particular program that they're using for just tracking attendance, but then they have another one they use for all their calendars, but then they have another one they use for child check-in, but then they use this other program they found online that does all of their registrations for events and does payment and stuff like that. ChurchTrac does all of this. You can do all this in the software. Not only does this approach make your life so much easier by just having one software you're using for all this, but this approach will save you a lot of money too. I've seen a lot of churches that have been able to cut down on how much they're spending on all these platforms by up to like $50, $60 a month because they're not having to pay for all these services. They're just using ChurchTrac. So that was a long tirade there about using multiple platforms. But let's talk about check-in now, because I want to show this. This is really cool. So I'm going to create an event, and I'm going to create this event from the attendance and check-in just because it's so much easier. Again, you can go in the calendar and create an event there, but I recommend just doing it here for attendance-based events. And we're going to call this child check-in. And from here, I'm just going to select that this is happening today. We'll just do that. And I can apply this to any calendar I want. I'll just say, you know what, this is going to be in our children's ministry calendar. All right, got it set. And now I can select the tags. Now, one thing worth noting here. Do you like to work smart and not hard? I don't know about you, but I do. And so what I like to do is copy from a recent event, and then I can actually just pull the tags from a recent event, and I'm done. I just copied all of the tags, and I'm ready to rock. And so from here, I'm going to go into our check-in mode. So I'll select the check-in mode, and it looks like a little stroller there. I know about that stroller life oh so much because I have a baby and constantly strolling her around the place. So check-in mode, select that. Now from here, I can go ahead and our check-in system, it's very similar to a lot of check-in systems out there. And the reason for this is because you kind of want them to all be very similar, because people that have gone to one church and now going to another church, you want it to be something recognizable. And you also want it to be something easy to use. And one of the easiest ways to do check-in is to have a method in which people come into a check-in station, whether that's a manned station by your ministry or that is a station in which they just go and check in themselves. But from here, they can search by their phone number. Like if I just punched in the last 4 digits of my phone number, from there I can get my profile pulled up, and then I can just check in the kids. So in this situation, for me to check in these children, I can just select Nick and Nora, And by selecting them, it's automatically marking them as here. And when I print those labels, I select this button to print the labels, it'll actually timestamp and everything too. One thing worth noting when it comes to doing check-in, I don't want to get too deep into child check-in, but I just want to point this out, that this system, it prints out labels and everything for the children. It also prints out like the labels for the parents or the guardians. So that way they can have that almost like a valet ticket, you hand to the children's ministry to pick up your kids. But these labels you can actually customize to have like any allergies, medical issues, special notes or instructions, emergency contact number, really great stuff to have. And so that's all built in. And then I can just select print labels, and then the software will go ahead and generate those out. And there's that valet ticket I was telling you about. So yeah, I'm here to pick up my kid. Here's a valet ticket. So there you go. That's check-in. I could talk so much more about that, but we just don't have the time. But such a powerful feature built into the events and attendance screen. And it doesn't matter if you're a ministry that only has, a handful of children, or you're a ministry that has a gaggle of geese of children, and you have like kids running around everywhere. At my church, I feel like every time I go there, I'm just like, geez, oh man, the playground's packed. But that is a great feature built into ChurchTrac, child check-in. Now, we've talked about how to record attendance and everything. I want to dive into now a different type of attendance event. And this type of attendance event is a registration. So this is when we don't know who all is going to come, but we want to know who's going to come to the event, and we want to make it easy for them to register and maybe have some sort of special form field to fill out, things like that. So let's talk about this. So to create a registration in ChurchTrac that people can actually register for events and everything, I go to my calendar and I just pick a date. And I'll tell you what, I use the potluck thing a lot, and I'm going to not use the potluck today. Instead, I'm going to call it a chili cook-off. I love food. I'm sorry. I'm not going to apologize for liking food. So our church, we're having a chili cook-off, and it is happening on Saturday, February 25th. Originally, we wanted to have it happen this weekend, but then they're like, that's Valentine's Day. And I was like, oh man, but chili's great. So we're going to call this the chili cook-off. And now I could make this an all-day event, but that would be crazy. We're not going to do a chili cook-off all day. We're going to have it start at noon. So this will start at noon, and it's not going to be a rager of a chili cook-off, but we'll go till 4. So 4 o'clock. And then I select my location. All right, this particular event, we're going to have this happen. We actually expect the weather to be kind of cold and everything as of late, so we're actually going to have this in our annex at our church. I can put this on any calendar I want. I'll choose the master calendar. Now, I want to publish this to my public calendar. Now, there's 2 rules of thought here. Some people wait to do this until they've created everything. I just go ahead and do it right here because I'm about to set this up and I'll be done in like a minute. So it's that fast. So from here, I want to go ahead and set up a registration for this event. So I'll select that button. Now this walks me through the registration setup. This is super easy. First step is, all right, who can register for this event? Do I want the registration for this event to be open to anyone? Or do I want the registration for this event to be only for people who have created a Church Connect account? So typically like your church members. Now, Chili Cook-Off, this is a community event. I want anybody and everybody in my neighborhood to come to our church to join in the Chili Cook-Off because we're about to get crazy with some spicy chili. So anybody is what I selected. Now the registration method. When it comes to doing registrations in ChurchTrac, we have a few different methods to choose from. The first is a single one. Now this is whenever you have just one person, they're registering for themselves, me, myself, and I'm registering for this event. Then you have the count method. This is whenever you're registering yourself, but you're also putting in like, hey, I'm also bringing 4 other people that are in my family, or I'm bringing a couple friends, whatever it may be, count method. And then you have the detailed method. This is for whenever you have events in which you need to get a lot of information for each registrant. So for this, think like your summer youth camp. You need to have all the information for each registrant for your summer youth camp. For this, think VBS. You need to have all the information for each child that's registering VBS as well as each volunteer, stuff like that. Now, 9 times out of 10, I see a lot of events in ChurchTrac and a lot of churches, they use this count method. That seems to be the most popular. So now enable registration for this event. Okay, now I'm not done yet. There's still a couple more things, so hold tight. From here, I can actually modify this event if I needed to, but it's good to go in that regard. Now, I want to go ahead and set up attendee types and costs and have some questions to ask people. Now, when I go to attendee types and costs, this is really cool. If you have created a ChurchTrac online giving account, which only takes like 20 minutes, you can actually accept payment for events within ChurchTrac, so people can pay with their credit card to register for an event. So if I wanted to, like I could say, hey, payment required, and then I can add different attendee types. So I can say like adult, and then I can say attendee cost, and I can say like $5 for adults, let's say. Then I can add another attendee type, and I can say child. There you go. Now, one thing I do recommend is to make it plural, just because whenever you are putting things in events, like you want to say adults instead of child, just because it's not like 5 adult, it's 5 adults. So always just make it plural whenever you're doing things like that. Now, I've seen other churches, they'll have like a dinner they're doing, and each attendee type is like the different dish for the dinner. And so there's so many different things you can do with this, but I'm just keeping it basic with this. So $5 for an adult, and then $2 for a child. And then from there, I can set up how much like the max registration is, and so you can actually cap it out at a certain amount for those families that maybe have like, I don't know, like 8 kids, and you don't want that family having to pay a gazillion dollars just to have a thing of chili. So you can do that as well, and then select your payment category. But for this, I'm going to delete all this just because this is really not a paid event. This is something I'm not going to ask for payment, and just delete here. So once I delete all that, then it's just going to be anybody register, boom, they can just start registering. So I did all that to do nothing, to show you what you can do, if that makes any sense. Okay, now form questions, this is another aspect of it. So by default, ChurchTrac is going to ask people for their name and their email, but I can add additional questions with the question builder. And one of the things I really like about this is because it makes my life easier when it comes to having to type out questions and stuff. You can create your own questions, and there are a lot of different question types to choose from. You can get really, really specific and have very customized forms that people fill out when they're registering for events, or you can use the pre-built ones. 9 times out of 10, I'm using the pre-built ones just because typically I'm not having to ask a crazy amount of information. And in this situation, I want to say phone number. I want to get people's phone number. And then like if this was a potluck, we already have a potluck field that's already pre-filled out. It makes your life a lot easier. Allergies or medical things, I can put that just because I may need to know if someone's allergic to something before I start putting stuff in chili. So I can put that in here. And then I can say that these are required. So this is if you're already using Church Connect, which is the church app and website built into ChurchTrac, this is very similar. It's actually the same form building engine. That sounds fast. So there you go. That's how you can add these fields and everything. Now I can change this and say, are you allergic to really spicy? I just have to spell spicy right. Chili. And then this can be a short text. It can be yes or no, whatever it may be. So I'm just going to hit close. There we go. So I've got this event created. Another thing worth noting too, when you're creating these registration events, is you can have an event cap. And so if this is an event where there's only so many spots available, you can plug in, hey, only 20 people can register for this. And once 20 people register, it's no longer available for people to register. We see a lot of churches utilize this for concerts, things like that. And then you can also put in a description for this event. And then the other thing you can do for the event is you have an event URL and an event QR code that are unique to that specific event, that you can share that URL on social media. You can text it out to your people with ChurchTrac's mass text messaging. You can take that QR code, you can put it on flyers, on the church bulletin, whatever it may be. And so that's all unique to your event. So there's that QR code and everything there for me to be able to share that with people. So that is just like the very quick version. I just wanted to show like the whole registration thing. Now, I want to go deeper into it a little later, and so I'm actually going to show what that looks like when you're registering for events. All right, so let's talk about how to get the most out of events here in ChurchTrac, because there are a lot of things going on, and you're looking at this and you're like, okay, Wes, give me some stuff that's going to help me, because I see this screen, I see all these features you've got. What are the things you recommend? So how to get the most out of it. First, number one, add multiple calendars. And again, on your event screen, you go to that calendar tab. So I see all these events going on here. I can go to that edit calendars and I can create calendars for each ministry. This is so great just because when you give a calendar to a ministry leader and you just give them ownership of that and say, hey, here's your calendar, go ahead and put everything you need to put down on here, and that way you can own that ministry with that calendar and everything going on. So that's a big one. The number two, set up online giving. If you haven't done that yet, it only takes like 20 minutes. And online giving, just FYI, ChurchTrac has some of the lowest fees for online giving. For credit card, I'll ask my team if they can put that in chat, but for credit card, if you're a 501c3, it's 2.2% plus 30 cents for credit card transactions. So when people are using their credit card to pay for events, that's what it would be, or if they're donating online to your church. And we also have ACH. And we just sent out an email, I think it was today, about ACH, just because you can save your church hundreds, sometimes thousands of dollars a year by encouraging your people to donate with ACH. And that's all built into ChurchTrac online giving as well. So I always like to say, hey, get online giving set up for your church and everything. That way you can take advantage of not only that, the benefits of online giving for your church, but also the benefits of having events and people paying for them on their phone. Now, the other thing, attendance reports. So I want to jump over reports because I want to show that this is a really good example of how great your life can be when you're using an all-in-one software like ChurchTrac to do all of your church management and communicate with your people and stuff. This is crazy. All right, so we have, I'll go to my calendar here just to show this off. So we have Ron's discipleship group. Okay, so this is just an example discipleship group that I've got at my church. Okay, and Ron is recording the attendance for his discipleship group on Church Connect, which you can do. We've got stuff in our user guide that shows how your people can actually record attendance and not even be ChurchTrac account users, but just your volunteers that have a Church Connect account. So Church Connect for your church people, ChurchTrac's for you and your staff leadership. But from here, I'm going to go to that reports tab, and I'm going to go to the attendance reports. And then from here, we have a few different attendance reports that you can generate. One of the coolest is the absentee report. So from here, I can actually generate an absentee report of everybody on a specific tag level. So I can say, you know what, I want to see who has not attended Ron's discipleship group, and I'll pick my start date. So the start date will be February, and then the end date will be, I can say, up into 2/28, whatever it may be. And then from here, I can choose the tags, and I can choose which tag this applies to. And this is going to be the discipleship group 1, because I want to know, hey, during this time period, who hasn't attended a single one? This is really neat. So not neat that they haven't attended, but it's neat that you can get this data and actually do something with it. So then I select View Report, and then the software generates a report, and I've got 2 people it's showing me that during that entire month-long period, these people never showed up once. Now, we don't generate these reports just to generate them and look at them and go, oh man, well that's not good. No, we generate these reports because we want to reach out to people. We want to see, hey, Kelly, we just want to check in and see how things are going. Hey, Joanne, how's it going? And how can I pray for you? And then here's the other cool thing. So it's one thing to generate a report, but it's another thing when you can show those absentees on ChurchTrac itself. So I can go ahead, go back, make sure I've got the right tag selected, which it stayed selected. Typically it does. So then I'll just show names. Here we go. So it's automatically just generated this list. It just hopped me over to the people screen, and I've got these 2 names. Check this out. I'm going to check off these names. I'm going to go to the messaging tab. I know we're getting deep here, but this is crazy. I go to the messaging tab, and then I can go send an email. Maybe I want to send out an email and just say, we missed you. Except not like the passive aggressive we missed you, but like we missed you like we actually care about you. And then I could go ahead and type out my message and everything to them, or it can send out a mass text. And so if it's 2 people or 20 people, whatever it may be, send out a text message. hi, first name, we missed you. We just want to check in and see how things are going. And then when they reply, we see those replies. We can have that communication with people and keep people from slipping through the cracks. This is amazing. Whenever I saw this ability to be able to use software in a way that's actually helpful in ministry and not just something where you're plugging away in a database, but this is a real life example of how you can utilize church software to actually keep people plugged into the body of Christ, which we are all about equipping the church to build the body of Christ here at ChurchTrac. And this is an amazing way to do it. So I just wanted to show that. Like, that was a long spiel of like using the reports, but I wanted you to see how reports are connected in other ways to the software. So definitely take full advantage of these reports that we offer. And again, when it comes to these reports, there's so many other reports that we have, like going back to the reports tab. I didn't even mention the calendar report, so you can actually print out your calendar, stuff like that. We have detailed reports, standard attendance reports. I mean, I just encourage you, just generate some of these reports to see some of the things they can do for your ministry. And every church, I find they kind of lean towards certain types of reports. Yeah, Roger, I agree. The out-of-the-box reports that are built in the software, I feel like do pretty much everything that most ministries need. And one thing I do want to point out, because you made me think about this, Roger, is that there are, in situations where maybe you want to export a report out to Excel or something, or maybe you want to take two reports, combine them to one or something like that, well, just export to CSV. Just an FYI, many of the reports in ChurchTrac, not all, but many, are actually exportable to CSV because we recognize that, hey, 95% of churches, they want to just go ahead and use the reports built in. They do exactly what they need. But for some of you that are power users out there who have very specific things that you're wanting to do and things you need to get reported and everything, that's why we provide the way to export reports out to CSV to be able to make your life a little bit easier. So just wanted to show that off. Okay. Now, when it comes to getting the most out of it, the other thing that I want to talk about is adding a registration card to Church Connect. So Church Connect, if you haven't really seen it yet, what is Church Connect? It's an app, it is a website, it's a member portal, it's all these things, and it's wrapped up into ChurchTrac. So one thing you can do is you can actually add these events to ChurchTrac and put them on Church Connect. And so going back to the events that I've created, for example, this chili cook-off. So I've created this event and everything. It's living right now in the event screen, but if I wanted to, I could hop over to Church Connect. I know we said we're talking about the event screen, but it seems like I'm hopping over to other screens. It's just because so many of these things intertwine. So in Church Connect, I've already built my Church Connect and everything, but I want to add this event to show up on my church app and on my website. So from here, I can actually add a card. So I'll add a card. And I want to add the registration card. So I'll select add this card. Okay, so it just added it. Now it's got 0 preview because it doesn't know what event yet. So I need to select the event. So I can actually go ahead and select chili cook-off. There it is. Boom, it just showed up. Chili cook-off's on there. And here's the other thing that's really nice. One of the worst things that we can do for our websites is have like event registrations to events that happened like months ago. So what I'm gonna do to make me not look like I'm a noob is I'm actually gonna go to card status here and make sure it's always displayed to date below. And then I can go ahead and hide this card after a particular date. So this is happening on the 25th. I'm gonna say on the 26th, I want that to disappear. So people can't register and everything for this. This is so great just because, let's be honest, people, we're busy. You're probably wearing multiple hats in your ministry. I know I am. The last thing I have time to do is constantly log in, take things down, put things up. So why don't you let the software do it for you, make your life easier. So this event will hide after that particular date. Okay. Now I've got it in there. The other thing I can do too is I can go through here and I can actually sort cards. And I recommend doing this. I recommend taking the card that you have. So right now it's all the way at the bottom. You can actually move that card up and make it wherever you want it to be. And so that way, when your people, they go to register for the event, you can just move that card exactly to where you want it to show up and everything. So that's definitely a good thing to do. Highly recommend it. So then when your people go on to Church Connect, so check this out. And again, they can get to this event by just scanning a QR code, or they can get to it by going to that website URL that you provide from the event, because every single event has its own unique QR code. But in this situation, I'm actually going to go to my church's Church Connect page. So I am logged in here. I'm actually on my church's app right now on my phone, and I'm just going to scroll. And again, I could have moved it to the top. I just quickly added it there. But there's that chili cook-off that I just created and everything. So here's the cool part. I can register right here, right now. So I'm going to click to register. And now, here's what's wild. Because I'm already logged in as a church member, it already knows who I am. I don't have to put in a lot of the information in the form, because it already knows exactly who I am. It already has my email and everything. So I just register for this event. And then from here, I can just punch in how many people are attending and stuff like that. Now, in this situation, I actually required the fields, even if people are logged in, so I still would have to punch this in. But I'll just say, hey, we're going to have 4 people in total that are attending. I put my name. And then from here, I can put my email address. So I'll just put my email address at gmail.com. I feel like all of us use Gmail now these days. And then I can put my phone number, so 904, and then 8675309. I use that number for a lot of things. People wonder why they can't get a hold of me. Are you allergic to really spicy chili? No, bring it. Bring me your spiciest chili. I'll have an ambulance waiting just in case. Continue. There we go. And now I've registered for that event, and you can see that event showing up there as well. So it's just really nice having these events show up in Church Connect. And by the way, not only is it going to show up whenever you add the card and everything there, but in Church Connect, like if I sign in here real fast just to show as a church member, I feel like this is something really good worth showing, is whenever I go to upcoming events. So again, the way I got to that, I selected the menu as a church member who's actually logged in to my Church Connect, and then I select upcoming events. And here we go, here's the upcoming events, and it's showing that chili cook-off right there. But I've already registered for it, which is nice. And then here's the other thing. This is something I wanted to show. I wanted to wait till now, but this is the power of ChurchTrac, because I have a lot of discipleship groups meeting at my church, or a lot of Sunday school classes. You get your people to get on Church Connect, you give them the permissions, they can actually enter the attendance for their small groups in Church Connect. And so I enter the attendance, and this is a church member, doesn't have a ChurchTrac account. I've just created a Church Connect account as a church member so I can have access to the app. And from here, I can track attendance for my discipleship group right there in the app. So it's super cool, super relevant. This is something that we're seeing so many churches just take a hold of and run with it and just make their lives so much easier. So yeah, that was a long thing showing you just kind of how Church Connect comes into play. So that's definitely really how to get the most out of events, is remembering that these events can tie really nicely into Church Connect, into your church's app, and be able to make your life so much easier when it comes to knowing how many people are going to come to an event, what they can bring if it's a potluck, stuff like that, all built right in. All right, now some tips. I'm going to give, this is like the quick, fast, I'm just going to really just throw a bunch of tips at you here. So first one, assign a user to get emails for registrations. So when you create an event, so I'll go back to the event just to show that real fast, the chili cook-off. So I can actually, on this event, from here, I can go to the setup and everything of that event, and I can actually assign who gets those registrations. And so when someone registers for this event, send an email to a selected user, and then I can say, hey, Weston gets those email notifications, so that way every time someone signs up for an event, I get an email. I know exactly who signed up for the event and everything as a church leader. So really great to do. So highly recommend that. Another tip to get the most out of this, and I didn't do this just because of the lack of time, but add an image to an event to really make it stand out. On Church Connect, whenever that event's there, it's just showing like a little calendar emblem and stuff, but you can actually drag and drop a photo to that event, and I recommend just creating a quick photo in Canva or something like that, and that way it just really makes it stand out, makes it look awesome on Church Connect. And I'm realizing I'm talking with my hands so much and I need to stop. Put the hands down, Wes. All right, share your URL, download the QR code. That's another tip. And again, the way you get to that, just to backtrack, because I want to really reinforce this, because I do get asked sometimes. So whenever you select that event, and then you scroll down, and this is already a registration event, and so you go to the setup, and then you have, scrolling down, the view event URL and QR code. This is a unique URL and a unique QR code that applies directly for this specific event. And so go ahead, share that QR code, go ahead, share that URL. I see churches all the time, they text it out, they email it out, they send that URL in social media, however you want to share it with your people, wherever your people live digitally, get it to them that way. Another one, sending a confirmation email, and again, that's right here in the same area. I highly recommend this. Check that, and then you can actually customize what that confirmation says. If you have specific directions to people, especially if this is like a community event, and maybe there's a unique thing going on with the parking situation at your church, if maybe your church is downtown or whatever it may be, put that in your confirmation message. So that way, not only are people registering for an event knowing what's going on, but then you can have this quick little message, hey, FYI, the best place to park is over here on 1st and 3rd for the event that we have. Maybe your church is throwing a 5K, whatever it may be. I actually was working with a church. They had a 5K they were throwing for the community. It was really cool, but they actually put specifications in their confirmation message of like where to park. That way people registering for the event didn't show up on the day be like, oh, I don't even know where to park my car. They told them in that confirmation email, so that way their people were in the loop. Another tip, show absentees on the people screen to send a message. I just want to reinforce that. I showed it earlier, but again, show absentees on the people screen. That just takes it beyond looking at a standard attendance report and actually doing something about it. And with ChurchTrac, ChurchTrac Mail, sending out mass emails has never been easier. With our integration with Twilio to send out mass texts, you can send out mass text to your people and everything. Really great tool. You can make a calendar public, and by calendar public, I mean the event. So if you have events that need to be on your public calendar, be sure whenever you select that event that you go ahead and you select that publish this event to public calendars. That's key, got to do that. And then the last one, you can add individuals and whole families to your database in the check-in screen. So when you're doing child check-in, you can add them right from that screen. That's something I get asked a lot of times, so I just want to throw in the tip is yes, you can do that on the fly, and in many cases when we're doing child check-in, that happens. All right, I covered a lot. Y'all, I feel like I just ran a marathon and I didn't even move my feet any. So let me get a sip of water here. And let's kind of transition this. I've gone through a whole lot of content, and really what I want to do now is just take this as a time of Q&A. And so the chat is wide open. Start bringing me your questions of things that maybe I didn't address, things that you want more clarity on, whatever it may be. If it's events related, it's on the table and we'll talk about it. Now, if you have questions that are kind of outside of the event screen, I'm just going to recommend you just reach out to our support team. I really just want to focus on the kind of the event screen and the things that have to do with it. So that way we can just make sure that you are ready to rock with this. Now, if you're watching in the future, hello future again, to get any answers to any of your questions you have, just click that help button. Our team is super fast here at ChurchTrac. We are really big on having an amazing support structure in place to help you as you navigate this journey of using an all-in-one church software to really help your church manage all the things and connect with your people. So we've got your back when it comes to that. All right, so my team, I'm gonna ask my team if they can kind of send me some of the questions that we get as we go along in my messenger here. So that way I know what things to actually answer, because I saw some questions my team already answered. Oh, and yes, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We have got almost 3,000 people, I think, last time I looked at the YouTube channel. It is just wild. It really is the best way to learn how to use the software, if I'm being honest, just because you can kind of learn it in your own time. In fact, you can kind of sit there, pour yourself a good old cup of coffee, take a sip, and then watch a video. And then before you know it, you're doing all the things in your church right there in your church software, making your life a lot easier. So, all right, I see a couple questions here. So, first question I saw coming in here, and this is from Melissa. I noticed events in worship and scheduling show up to my calendar and events. However, and attendance events, which I appreciate. However, when I enter events in my calendar, they do not show up in worship and scheduling. So then I have to create the event again in the worship scheduling. So that's a situation. Reach out to our support team, Melissa. They have some really good kind of documentation they can give you and just some clarity. But yeah, worship and scheduling, it is kind of treated, it's built off the same engine and it's pulling from the same data set, but it kind of keeps things separate just because as a worship leader or someone who is kind of scheduling services, there's all these other things going on because you're actually like scheduling all these volunteers every week and you may be adding songs and service elements and stuff. But our team will give you some more clarity on like how all that works together and how it looks. And one thing I do want to point out here, just because I get asked this question a lot, and we have a really great article about this. This is actually a feature we came out with not too long ago. So going to our online user guide, we have all these things kind of categorized, like I was saying earlier. And if you go to the, I believe it's the events and registrations where we've got it. Yeah. We've recently made some changes, so I had to remember. But we have, again, everything I'm covering today, we have it like even more detailed on how to use all these features and videos and stuff. But we have this really great article on cloning versus recurring events. So it kind of gives you the details of like, hey, when do you use cloning events? When do you use recurring events? I really recommend checking out this article. In fact, I would argue that for most ministries, this whole recurring events feature here is really not the best, if I'm being honest. And it's because cloning events, for most use cases, is actually way superior than creating those recurring events. And this article kind of goes through and tells you why and everything. So highly encourage you check that out. So Wayne, how does the QR code work is your question. So let me answer that one. So when it comes to the QR code, Wayne, so when I go to my event, and I'll just scroll out because I want to show you this in real time so you can see this. It's pretty cool, Wayne. So I'll go to the chili cook-off here. And so like I was saying earlier, if you go to the setup on that event, and then from here I've got everything set up, we have this view event URL and QR code. So this QR code, this is a unique QR code specific to that particular event. And whenever your people are using their phones, whether they have a QR code scanning app or something, and I'll just show this on the phone real fast. So right now I've got my camera opened up on my phone, on my scanner app. So the team's getting that cranked up. I just wanted to show this super quick. So from here, I'm gonna scan this QR code. My phone instantly sees this QR code and everything, and then it takes me right to the event in which I can go ahead and I can register for the event as a church member. So that is kind of how the QR codes work. And again, we also have QR code that's for Church Connect itself, and so your people can actually just go straight to Church Connect if you list that event with a card on Church Connect too. But the QR code is definitely going to make your life easy when it comes to getting people registering for your events by having that QR code available there. All right, let's see what other questions. My team is... And I do want to reinforce, there's something that I should have mentioned earlier, and I believe that was for you, Melissa. So Melissa, you can actually use this event for worship planning in the settings for that event. So I just wanted to throw that out there just in case. All right, other questions here. Let's see. So I see a question from Roger. And I apologize, it takes me a minute to read just because I have these really bright lights that are like just piercing me like the sun, and I'm like trying to read a computer screen that has a massive amount of glare, so it takes me a second to gather my eyeballs to the right place to read this here. All right, so Roger's saying it helps with our calendar that is shared on our webpage. Another help is every different calendar has another color it shows. So your suggestion to use a different calendar for each ministry is a good idea. Yeah. Roger, it just makes it to where you can kind of put the ownership in your people and say, hey, like you own this calendar. This is your calendar. And I think, Roger, you brought up a really valid point that I want to show everybody super fast, if I may. Whenever you're editing your calendars, so you can say who can view events, who can edit events. this is really key. One of the things we run into sometimes is people will have a calendar that's only available for like pastors or something. I'll just say volunteers and above for that one, but like, let's say this particular one was a pastors only calendar and the only people that had access to this were pastors. And then like the church admin is like, why can't I see any of the events that this person is putting on this calendar? Well, if this calendar is set for pastors only across the board, well, nobody's going to see that except someone who has the permissions of pastors. And where you see those permissions for people, if you go to your settings on ChurchTrac, I know we're kind of flying away from the event screen, but this is so important to know just in general. So if you go to your different user accounts, you can actually specify the leadership level that somebody has in your ministry. And so from here, I can say this person is granted a permission level of whatever it may be. And so that could be the culprit. This is something we probably get asked once a week at least, and it's why can't I see calendar events I just created? Well, it's probably because you didn't have the permission level, and so as soon as you created that calendar event that you made for that specific calendar, it disappeared for you because it has a permission level that you do not have access to. So that's a pretty common thing I see. So question here from Tim. How do we get the attendance to check in anyone on our app for the event instead of ChurchTrac? All right, so how do we get the attendance to check in anyone on our app for the event? So a couple ways, Tim. So the first way, you want to create that attendance event. So on your event screen, you want to go ahead, you create the event, and then after you've created that event, you have to remember the tags apply accordingly. And so just to use an example here for today, so today I will just apply just a test event to show you. And it really doesn't matter where I put the location and everything right now. I just want to assign the tags here, but then I'll add this event. So I've got this test event, and then once you've created the event and everything, you do want to obviously create the tags for this event so they're applied. Now in a situation like attendance for like your entire church, well then that's the situation in which you're just going to have a tag that maybe has like all of your people in your database. It's super common. And so I've already actually created that event. So if I actually look here down to the test event, I will see it, or no I won't because I didn't actually make an attendance event. Let me create it again and actually make an attendance event. So I'm just going to call this test event. It's happening today, main calendar. Then I will go ahead, select the tags, and then this is whenever I'm going to select my worship attendance tag. And that's going to apply. I can just apply to everyone if I wanted to, or just my worship attendance, apply that. And so this is really key, is making sure you apply that tag that has all the people that you're trying to track attendance for. And in this case, it's like everybody at my church, so I want to have that tag applied to everybody. And then once I have that set up, then you go to Church Connect, and you want to make sure that you have an attendance card in place. And so the attendance card I have set up right now in Church Connect to display if a person is logged in. And so from here, then I would just go into Church Connect. And so I'll ask my team if they can show that real fast on the phone. So this is all set up. The event's done. I've already created an attendance card. We've got information if you're trying to figure out how to create an attendance card, just check out our online user guide. But once you create an attendance card, I almost held my phone up like this so you can see it, but I forget my team can just show stuff. But from here, I can just select record your attendance, and there we go. This is the test. I have both the child check-in for this because you can have multiple events going on. And then I can actually track the attendance for myself, my child, my wife, my other child, select submit, and there we go. I just tracked attendance. It's done. So that's how you do that. And then like I showed earlier, if you have like a small group situation and everything, that's something in which you can have people actually track the attendance. And so if I go to my upcoming events and I go to Ron's discipleship group, I can select enter attendance for that and actually track the attendance of all the people that showed up in my discipleship group. There are so many ways to track attendance in ChurchTrac, it's kind of unreal. And sometimes it can be overwhelming just because you're like, well, which way should I use? Should I create an attendance card? Should I make it to where people can track it like I just showed here with Ron's discipleship group? Should I just use live mode? Should I use check-in? Should I print out roll sheets? I didn't even show that, but you can print out roll sheets in ChurchTrac as well. But yeah, there's so many ways to track attendance. So Good stuff. All right, team. I'm not sure what. I know there's some more questions here. I'm trying to see what other questions we've got that I can answer for you all here. So how do we get the? So I showed that to Tim. Would you show us how to put a picture of the chili on your chili cook-off? So yeah, again, just to show that, like, you really want to put a picture on a lot of events, especially at their registration events. So if I go to that chili cook-off event, and then I just go to the setup of this event. So, whoops, I scrolled down too much. Setup. So I'm on the setup for this event. This is where I drag and drop the image. You literally just take the image, drag and drop it. Or you can just click it and it'll ask you which image from your browser of your computer. That's how you do that. So yeah, super important. I recommend it pretty much anytime you do registrations. Register, you say you need to get a grip on all the permissions, the settings. Yeah, that takes a hot second, but once you get all that, Roger, you will be golden. Would you make a list of tags available for us as a template? So Pastor Hal, that's actually something by default. ChurchTrac already has a lot of tags laid out and everything. And the process of creating tags, I mean, you can check out our online user guide and videos, but it's pretty quick. So I would recommend just going ahead, looking at the default tags that are already in there. And if you need to make your own, just make your own. It literally takes you like 60 seconds to make a tag and then like apply it as an attendance tag or as a tag you want to use for scheduling, stuff like that. All right. I think that's all the questions. Good stuff. A lot of good questions here that everyone brought here. I hope this really helped you kind of get a grip of everything going on in the events and attendance screen. Again, there's a lot going on in here. This is why we had to dedicate an entire live stream to just this. I mean, when we cover this in our Getting Started workshops, which, by the way, if you've not joined a Getting Started workshop and you're like, Wes, I don't even know like half the things built into ChurchTrac. What are these features? I'll ask my team. They can post a link that you can actually register. We do those weekly. But this is one of those things where we had to dedicate an entire live stream. We're here at an hour right now of just showing you all these things because there's just so much going on in it. This is why we have so many user guide articles, so many videos. When it comes to managing a church and using a church software that has all of these features, it can get daunting just because you're like, oh man, where should I start first? Check out our online user guide. We've got a roadmap that helps guide you and everything. And we've got so much content to help you along the way. And if you ever get stuck, just create a support ticket. Ask our team. They're super fast. They're super friendly. We have all served in church, in ministry at some capacity, either in the past or we're currently serving. And so there's a good chance that if you're currently dealing with something and you don't know how to do it, one of us here has done it and we've been in your shoes and we'll help you out with it. So you have a fantastic rest of your week and we'll talk to you soon. Next week we're talking about worship planning and scheduling. You'll get an email about it. We'll put an in-app notification, all the things, and that'll be a good one. So tell your worship leader to join because we're going to dive deep into how to do all those. See ya.